Quiero pedirle que se remonte 2 años atrás en el tiempo, al 6 de enero de 2021. Usted estaba aquí, en la Cámara, con otros congresistas para certificar los resultados de las elecciones, la victoria de Joe Biden. ¿Cuándo se dio cuenta de que algo no iba bien?
Más o menos a la mediodía nos dimos cuenta que podríamos oír ruidos afuera y lo que pasó es que la policía entró para sacar los líderes, Nancy Pelosi y los otros líderes. Y nos dimos cuenta que algo estaba ocurriendo.
We were locked down when the announcement was made that the Capitol had been breached and that we needed to stay put. We could hear the doors slamming, the doors are so heavy and tall that the echo in the chamber, that alone was a horrific experience. But there was one door above us that couldn't be locked. And we were yelling at the one officer that was standing there to lock the door because by now we could hear glass breaking, we can hear furniture being thrown against the wall. And the officer was responding that he didn't have keys and he couldn't lock it. So we we're yelling back at him, barricade it, block it with furniture. So that's what he did. He moved a desk or something in front of one of those doors and barricaded that way. Thank God that nobody tried to come in through that one specific door.
I worked in narcotics. That particular day, my office was involved in a narcotics trafficking investigation. We were going to conduct a controlled drug buy. But after hearing reports about what was taking place and the attacks on law enforcement at the Capitol, I made the decision on my way in that that's not what I was going to be doing, that I was going to put on a uniform for the first time in almost a decade and respond to the Capitol. And it was there that we heard a distress call coming out from other officers that were engaged in some pretty brutal hand-to-hand combat in the Lower West Terrace Tunnel. And what we encountered was about 40 DC police officers and a handful of U.S. Capitol police officers engaged in brutal, medieval-style hand-to-hand combat. The tunnel itself is narrow, only about 250 feet long, and these few dozen officers were trying to hold back a mob of thousands of violent rioters.
They broke the glass? Everybody stay down! Get down!
We were watching our colleagues that were down on the floor leave. Everybody was being escorted. And we were looking at each other wondering, what about us? And we kept looking at those locked doors and thinking about, there's no way out for us. At some point, we started thinking and talking about, is it possible for us to jump down? And we certainly couldn't survive that jump, certainly without broken bones. The officer ordered us to the floor, to get on the floor and to be quiet.
La policía entró y nos dijo que era posible que iban a usar al gas contra la gente que entró al Capitol y nos dijo que deberíamos encontrar debajo de nuestras sillas las máscaras para protegernos si tenían que usar gas. En ese momento nos dimos cuenta que los insurgentes, los criminales, estaban casi a la cámara.
And the officer kept yelling and saying, put on a mask, put on your mask. And at one point, I yelled back at him and I said, sir, I have 2 masks on. I was thinking about my COVID masks. I never thought that a member of Congress in the U.S. Capitol would have to put on a hoodie, a gas mask. We had no idea that we would be locked down 45 minutes, face down, crawling, searching in our purses for weapons because we thought that we would have to fight our way out.
Y lo que ocurrió para mí es que yo oí el disparo en el primer nivel, el disparo que mató a la mujer que estaba, rompió un vidrio, una ventana, y estaba entrando, oí el disparo que mató. Y en ese momento entendí que esta situación era muy, muy serio. Y estuve mirando cuando la policía ya tenían sus armas entrenados en los insurgentes que estaban tratando de entrar a la cámara. Ya pasa 20 minutos, 25 minutos y encontraron a una puerta segura y nos sacaron más o menos 6, 7 de nosotros que quedábamos en la cámara.
And as I was running out and coming down the stairs from the 3rd floor to the 2nd floor and then eventually to the basement, my son called. My son is a police officer, and it breaks my heart to think of what he might have been thinking, what was happening to his mother. I shouldn't have answered the phone, but I did for him because I always answer his call. And I just said, sweetheart, I am running for my life. I can talk to you.
Los insurgentes, algunos gritaban, llamaban a capturar a Nancy Pelosi, a colgar a Mike Pence. ¿En algún momento usted sintió que su vida o sus vidas corrían peligro?
Sí, había un periodo de 1 hora, creo, en que me di cuenta que habían personas entre el grupo de insurgentes muy peligrosas. La otra cosa es que cuando salí yo vi a mucha de esta gente, la policía lo tenieron en el piso, y me di cuenta que la mayoría de esta gente fueron personas normales, personas que quizás en otro día pudiera encontrarlos en un Starbucks o en la iglesia, algo así. Pero por supuesto habían unos que sin duda querían cometer violencia. Y sí, había 1 hora más o menos en que yo fui muy nervioso. Soy un hombre blanco y por eso pensé si estoy en un grupo de estos insurgentes puedo sacar mi corbata y quizás no me matan, pero no, fue 2 o 3 horas increíblemente muy peligrosas para nosotros y para la democracia.
I was pulled off the line by a group of, or an individual in the crowd and beaten with fists, metal objects, and then at one point I was struck with a taser device numerous times on my neck at the base of my skull. As a result of that, I lost consciousness. I suffered a heart attack and a traumatic brain injury, and I was later diagnosed with PTSD.
¿Y cómo han sido estos 2 años?
I mean, it's been difficult. I was a DC police officer for 2 decades. I worked primarily in small mission units that focused on narcotics and violent crime. So in a lot of ways, I did have 2 decades of experiences in law enforcement to prepare me for the violence that I experienced on January 6th. But never in my career did I have a situation where the reality of what I experienced was denied by so many Americans.
It was a very difficult year following that. We set up counseling sessions, group sessions. We set up a text account where we were texting to each other. our feelings, very, very raw feelings. And we continue to this day, we continue. Our promise to each other was that no matter the time of day or night, if somebody needed to talk to someone, that we would be there for each other.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Want to see our election victory stolen by emboldened radical left Democrats?
How do you feel?
El problema es que hoy día, después de 2 años, todavía hay más o menos 65% de republicanos que todavía creen en esta mentira. Eso es increíblemente peligroso para nuestra democracia.
I know the Attorney General is moving on some of the most violent offenders, that were here that day. And I'm happy that that is happening, but for me, that is not justice. Those people were equally, they believed a lie that they were told, and they have to, pay for their actions because they're adults and they should have known better. But the people who funded that insurrection, the former president of the United States, who never stopped lying from day one, who promoted, lies, and with his megaphone that he had, he was able to convince so many people.
We are, for lack of a better term, we are engulfed in or engaged in a civil war in this country. Now, obviously, it doesn't look like the previous civil war that we experienced in the 1860s. We don't have 2 armies lining up on a battlefield taking shots at each other, but we did have a battle. But for some reason, we have a few individuals in this country that recognize the significance of that day, and then we have some that are, on the other side of that argument. But what we have predominantly is a lot of people in the middle who are indifferent. But in reality, we all bear responsibility for the future of our democracy. So they need to wake up.